Okay, so we're all here except for Trish Scott. So I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is the additions and corrections to the agenda. I have one really. We've been asked to add an executive session to discuss a contractual matter at the end. And there are pay orders waiting for us to approve that we can look at between this meeting and the next week's meeting. But that's not really an agenda item, it just exists, but I'll tell you while I have you. Anybody else have any additions, corrections, changes? Okay. Cool. Board norms, obviously stick to the agenda, be respectful, do the best we can with struggling in this format, although it isn't the end of the world. If you're here, you can click on your name on the upper right-hand corner and raise your hand. And if I see I can see hands as they go up on my control panel here, and we'll call you. If it goes ridiculously long, go ahead and unmute yourself and try and get my attention. That said, moving along, members of the public, if you're here to talk about basically our single item agenda, that's we'd ask you to just participate in the discussion then. If there's something else that you wanted to bring to our attention tonight, now is your chance. Unmute yourself and let me know. I'm looking for hands too. Nothing. All right, beautiful. Oh, just letting somebody in. Okay, so the new business item on here is something that we've been talking about for quite some time, working together to sort of do some long-range planning about where we as a district go in the next, in the foreseeable future. We've been talking about doing this essentially since we formed as a district. We didn't want to do too much too quickly, so we've waited now until really year 3, or our 3rd budget. And, we've come up with a 5-month conversation process, which is laid out in the sort of work plan. It's a bunch of circles that kind of steps us through the process. We hope that we have a bunch of time. We hope that we have enough time to go through this in a careful and considered manner. We have no idea where this ends up. There's no predetermined outcome here. It's really a process, and we've been talking about the process for a few meetings now about how long and who would be involved and what the timeline would be. And so we've come up with that, and we've added an extra meeting to every month, plus a committee that's going to review and ask questions and take a deeper dive into this process over the next 5 months to at least explore what options we as a district have. At the end of this in September and October, we'd like to be able to say, here are some things that we've looked at, and here are the reasons they do or don't make sense, and have options for the district that the board supports and talks to and has community support as well. So we're beginning a very long process. There will be one meeting of this board each month dedicated solely to this process and discussing what we do here and the options that we come up with and how we get it going. Questions on that? Thoughts? Did I miss anything? I got a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so that's the schedule is actually posted. We'll meet tonight. We'll talk about this. The end of the month, the budget committee will meet and look at the work that we tasked the administration with. For tonight, we have 8 options that have been presented to us. We had asked for some options as a board, and Bill and his cabinet have worked together to come up with these 8 options. These are not the only 8 options. These are just a starting point. We may come out of tonight's meeting with 10, 12, 16 different options. At some point, there will have to be a winnowing process where we, excuse me, where we pare down the options before we ask for a deeper dive into what each option looks like. You know, we obviously can't go that deep into all these options just based on time. We'd be studying forever. But we can take a look, ask some questions, make some suggestions, have some changes, get some more research, and continue to go through the process of deciding what we look like going forward. So that's where we are. Each one of these options, there's a 2 or 3 page document talking about how teaching and learning works, how special ed works, what some of the financial implications were. There's also a really good 1-page sheet that went out to you today with a real high-level look at the financials, sort of like a financial summary of each option. You know, what we don't, I mean, none of these are carved in stone, and none of these are you know, I mean, it could end up being a combination of some from option 2 and some from option 7 and a little bit of option 1 thrown in at the end or something that we ultimately go with. It's that flexible, but this gives us a way to discuss what we're doing. So with that said, I'm not even sure how we necessarily want to go through this and discuss it. I mean, do we want to walk through each option? Do we want to hear a little bit about each option? I'm assuming that everyone's read the materials on each option. Maybe we can just open it to questions about, you know, in option this, what does this mean? You know, what's your pleasure, folks? Can you share each option? If I've been asked to share my screen and share each option. If I do that, I think the video will go away, but let me see what I can do.
Joe, if you share, I apologize for butting in. I've been doing Zoom for 2 years. It'll put people off to the side. Your screen will show kind of left and center.
Okay, I wasn't as sure with this because I'm sharing from the Google Doc. I just have to find it too. Is that it? Bear with me here. As soon as I find the documents, I will share each option. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is option 1. It's multi-page document, and I don't think, because of what I'm looking at here, I can share it on multiple pages side by side. Sharing my screen, I have lost the ability to see if you raise your hand, folks. I apologize. So option one is essentially what we're doing now. Keeping the existing structure, we run pre-K through 12 locally, 3 elementary locations, and middle and high school at Leland and Gray. You know, under teaching and learning, we talk about, hang on, I'm letting some people in here. Okay. They talk about, under the teaching and learning, it talks about class size, classroom to teacher ratio, and class configuration. Essentially, that's, you know, what we're working with now. You know, it goes through the special ed, and there's really no change to the operational costs. And the future consideration is just the structural integrity of Leland and Gray. There is apparently a preliminary engineering report that calls that into somewhat question. Not safety, but long-term viability. Questions on that one?
I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I was looking through all of these documents earlier, and I noticed that just about every option mentions the structural integrity being a long-term consideration for Leland and Gray. Can we talk a little bit more about what exactly that means? Like, is it viable? Is it a strong enough? Oh, sorry. I'm Keegan, Jamaica representative, school board. Sorry about that. Thanks for the reminder, Mr. Anton. Speaking to the structural integrity of that building, because it is a concern for all of the options that were shared, can you speak a little bit more about how do we ensure that no matter what option we pick, what is it going to cost to maintain or update or improve the structure itself?
I have not seen the report yet. It's just preliminary. Bill, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask if Chris Medina, the Director of Operations, could weigh in.
Sure.
Yeah, Chris Medina here, Director of Operations. So we had a preliminary engineering report done, which pretty much just came back that they want to do some further testing of the building, including some crack monitoring, structural load assessments, as far as some minor deconstructive testing, just to really see what's going on behind the walls. Again, as Joe mentioned, it's not really a safety thing at this point. It's our long-term viability of the building. So any option that kept Leland and Gray as an operating facility, I wanted to just put that out there as something we have to consider for financial investment. At this point, we don't have any information of what that would cost. That's phase 2 of the engineering. Once they do that, their further analysis of the facility, they can give us a better cost of what it's going to take to put into the building to ensure it's going to be operational for years to come. The only cost we have now is just from our capital needs assessment that was done, which is somewhere about $1 million. Just some upgrades to the facility, separate from what we're going to get back from the engineering report.
So it's more of a there's something there coming, but we don't know exactly what it is, but there is something we need to keep in the back, keep in mind as we go forward. That building, if we're going to continue to use it, does have potential costs associated with it. I mean, we can run through the options pretty quickly. I can put up option 2 and run through it. Hang on one second. Okay, so option 2 is a tech heavier version of what we're doing now. We essentially continue running, the 3 elementary locations and the middle high school at Leland and Gray. We look for financial efficiencies and use more remote learning opportunities, particularly in high school. It does change class size a little bit, but it doesn't significantly change operational costs. Just because, we'll be tech heavy, but even those require a person at some point. Dana, I see your hands up.
Yeah, the virtual learning part, Joe, Dana West, Jamaica Rep. Can Bob answer to this? Thibault, is this working through this COVID crisis? Is this virtual learning actually working for these kids, or is it not? Would this be something we'd want to get into?
This is Bob Thibault, principal. I guess I would say that online learning can be successful with certain kids who have the executive functioning skills to be able to manage that level of independent work. I would say as a whole, it's not successful across the board. I think in pockets it can be a successful way to broaden curricular offerings, but it's only good for particular students who learn a particular way and have those executive functioning skills to be able to manage it. So I would say it is not a silver bullet in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, I was just kind of curious if it's something we really want to invest in on a wholesale basis than just 1 or 2 classes.
Joe, just if you're not quite ready, I would just say, Dana, part of this is we already have a partnership with VTVLC, the online virtual learning collaborative through the state of Vermont, which allows us 50 slots for students to access. We pay a small membership fee for that, and we contribute 1 teacher to teach 1 class throughout the year. So there's a financial implication of that, but we already do get 50 slots for our students to access and have had since I've been principal for the last 4 years. We have not yet filled those 50 slots in any of the years I've been doing it.
Thank you.
No, I would just add that this is the option that is the least fleshed out because we don't know what it would look like. Dana asks a really good question. We're kind of experimenting in that world now on an emergency basis. And Bob makes a great point that we have dipped our toe in the water in virtual high school. So it is something that the board has mentioned in the past, so we wanted to include it, but it's the one option that is presented tonight that really needs a lot more fleshing out before we could even understand what it would mean for students and opportunity.
Okay, so I think that I don't see any more hands or questions on that one. Can you share 3, Al? Oh, you have a question, or you're going to share 3?
I'm both. So this is kind of a question, actually, not just about 2, but Bill or Lori, if you could speak to on the summary sheet that we have here that goes from 0 to 1, just to explain the difference in the offsetting revenues, how that happened. Why did we go from almost 1.3 million in offsetting revenues to 1,166?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. It's basically just for informational purposes only. Option 0 is where you, what the board voted for a budget, a $2.06 tax rate, unified tax rate, that will go to the voters. Now there are some incentives, so none of these take into account any type of incentives. These are just the unified tax rates before any incentives have been applied. But what I wanted to show you was more about where it is being headed. So we talk a lot about revenues, or revenues have such a big impact on all of these scenarios. So the number one, the drop in offsetting revenues, is basically the drop in tuition students that has been happening. So basically, if we were to put together a budget for fiscal year 21 right now, this is what it could look like, because in fiscal year 20, we budgeted for 49 tuition students, and we collected on 38. So you can see there was a drop there. In fiscal year 21, before I knew about a couple of families moving out, we budgeted for 45. So this is showing basically where would the tax rate be if there were 38 tuition students. Does that answer your question, Al? It's just a comparison. Number one is just a kind of a comparison number.
Okay, so it's from 49 to 38?
In fiscal year 20, I budgeted 49 tuition students based on the information, of course, in the fall before students know where they're going to go when they graduate 6th grade. We received tuition from 38 students, or towns that send students. For fiscal year 21, I budgeted 45, knowing that there was going to be some amount of reduction. But if we only get 38, like we got this year, then the tax rate would be $2.12 without any other adjustments to the budget. So what I'm showing is that the decrease in tuition students is having a major impact, as well as increasing expenses.
Okay, got it. So would that be kind of considered worst case, or really just level setting with what you got, 38?
This would be, if we put together a budget today, this is probably where the tax rate would come out. So it's just showing where you're headed in the future if we don't get more tuition students or equalize pupils, that type of thing.
Okay, great. So Joe, give me 1 second. I will switch over to 3 if we want to do that.
Okay. I'm not sharing anymore.
1 second. There we go. Okay. There we go. Joe, I give it to you. I'll just scroll up and down at wherever you want me to.
Okay. So option 3 is to run pre-K 12 locally, but to not and to run elementary schools at Townsend Elementary and Newbrook Elementary, and to run middle high school at Leland and Gray. Jamaica would either be used for a special ed programs, or return to the town. That one, class. We reduced some expenses based on reduction in a number of staff, but we also, as you and Lori were just discussing, lose some of the offsetting revenues because of tuition students. And so, the tax rate doesn't move a lot doing that. It changes some, but it's not a significant savings in terms of a tax rate. student-teacher ratio is about 1 to 17 in the elementary schools, and then is course dependent at Leland and Gray. So those are, I think are acceptable numbers in terms of class size, but again, we don't see a significant change from the way things are now.
Joe, I raised my hand.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was on full screen mode when Al shared and I didn't see it. I see your hand is up and then Dana's hand is up. Go ahead, Emily.
Totally fine. Just a quick question. You said Jamaica used for special ed programs in this one. We don't separate our special ed students from our. I'm curious what you meant by that, or what this meant by that.
You want to have Stephanie answer that one, Bill?
I will let anybody who can answer that question answer it. Thank you.
Hi there.
Stephanie, are you still here?
Yep, I'm still here. This is Stephanie. So you are correct that we don't, put students with disabilities in one location. However, we are working with other regional areas to try to create more efficiencies and regional programming to better meet the needs of students rather than sending them out of district placements. So that would be something we could consider. And that's kind of what our thoughts were, was we would target certain populations of students who are sent out or would be getting sent out due to their level of severity and develop a program around them.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Joe, it's Dana. I had the same question as Emily. I mean, I figured we don't separate them. We mainstream them, right?
Yep.
True.
This is Stephanie again. Yes, we do try to ensure we're offering the least restrictive environment for students, which means the most time with non-disabled peers. But there are several students whose needs we're not able to meet at this time, and so they are in out-of-district placements that provide the specialized treatment that they are in need of.
Thank you, Stephanie. More questions? People are asking questions on chat. I don't think chat actually gets recorded as meeting, so it would be better if you ask the question verbally than in the chat. Even if it does get recorded, it's just a lot easier to follow if you bring it up, and you'll probably get a better answer than just a chat question.
Joe, you get more than a better answer. You get a more transparent answer because everybody gets to hear it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
this is Keegan. I'll restate the question that I asked if that's your preference. I had asked about in the event that for option 3, if Jamaica Village School were to close, would there be open K-12 choice for Jamaica residents? And Mr. Anton responded by saying, no, it depends on what the West River operates, not specific to Jamaica.
Yeah, we're all one district now, so unless we close them all, there's not, or become a, opt to become a choice district, we're all in this together. Any more discussion of option 3? Dana, your hand is up still or again?
Again, the part about closing the schools, any part is closing the schools, does that vote still go to the townspeople, the legal voters of that town, should they close the school? So that's
Absolutely.
still on the books.
Oh yeah, yes. We could, it would be a discussion if the option or options, if what we decided, if what we thought made the most sense was to close school or schools, then it would be ultimately a vote of those townspeople, or, in the case of Leland and Gray, the entire union. before we could do it. So it has to make sense for all the stakeholders to have it happen. Okay. We ready to move on to option 5? Option 5 is to have pre-K 8 locally run
You're on
with
option
pre-K 5 in, I'm sorry?
4, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry, option 4. Option 4, pre-K 8 locally run, pre-K 5, pre-kindergarten through 5th grade in the 3 buildings, Jamaica, Newbrook, and Townsend, 6 through 8 at Leland and Gray, and 9 through 12 would be school choice. It keeps our youngest students home, it still gets them congregated for middle school, and it sends them out into the world for high school. Brattleboro, Green Mountain, Burton, wherever. We would, there would be significant reduction of, well, there would be reduction in expenses based on, less FTEs, about 60. But there would also be reduction in offsetting revenues, small school grants, tuition from the high school, and high school grants. We'd still need to put money into the building. So that one doesn't, what's option 4? That one doesn't really, as tax rate, result in significant savings. It keeps the ratios similar in the grade schools, and then high school is, whatever the parents and student decide. Dana, I see your hand up.
Yeah, is this
Hi,
the
Mike.
worst case scenario in this option? Because the high tax rate and the lack of full usage of Leland and Gray, I kind of count this as the worst case scenario option.
I don't know if it's worst case. There were, starting it off, we just wanted to try and look at everything, all the different permutations that were possible. From don't do anything to close everything, I think is and trying to think of permutations in between. We may, hopefully going through this and having these discussions, we see something that a combination of this or something that makes sense to us. But this, I don't know if I'd call it worst case, but it certainly doesn't have much to recommend it in my opinion either. Mike, you had a question?
I did. This is one of the options that has 3 small schools grants listed. My understanding is we only get 2 of those right now, and I believe it's Townsend and Jamaica. My recollection is that you had to qualify in a certain year, and in that previous year that had already happened, Newbrook didn't qualify. So I'm just wondering where the 3rd small schools grant is coming from.
Lori?
Right. So you're right, Mike. I had 3 in there for fiscal year 20 because they had told me that we were going to qualify for Newbrook's one, and then they meaning the AOE, said that because they didn't qualify in a certain year, then they would not qualify going forward for Act 46 for the transition grant, small schools transition grant. So you're right. So it actually should be 2 and 1, to be honest with you, on all of these numbers. I was thinking this year that we're in. So
okay.
I just wanted to also clarify something above as far as the FTEs is concerned. And I can see the way I worded it there that it would be confusing, but it's there are a total of 60 FTEs versus a reduction of 60 FTEs at the top.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay. I have another
Yeah, that's
general
the-
question for Lori. I have another general question for Lori. I don't know if you want me to hold off on that one or if I can let it fly now.
Well, ask it and we'll see.
All right. Well, my understanding is that we as a district are facing significant funding increases due to the change in the healthcare law, and which employees have family members that are able to qualify, and that takes effect on January 1st, right? So, and my understanding was it was a big number. Like if all the employees and all their families took advantage, it could be like upper 6 digits or lower 7 digits. So is any of that included? I don't think it is included in this, because I thought it was about $30,000 per employee or up to that amount of money. So I'm just trying to figure out if that's included in this, but I don't think it is.
None of those are included in this.
Okay.
That, that's for the support staff. That's where that falls under. And
I know it's a law change too, so.
It is a law change, and any anybody that falls underneath the support staff agreement, a paraeducator, which most of those are in Wyndham Central under special ed, then they would qualify for any tier of a plan. So right now we only offer a single plan under the current master agreement, but the law says they can have a family plan. So that's, it's the difference between, and some people only take like a cash in lieu offering. So it could be anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000 per support staff person.
Right. And wasn't there like 30 or 40 support staff that were eligible?
Yeah, it's around $500,000 is what the worst case scenario could look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so anything back to option 4? Okay. Option 5. This is helpful to have you do this, Al. Thank you. So option 5, we have pre-K through 8 run locally, but we only run the program in 2 locations. We only run the pre-K 5 in Newbrook and Townsend, with a 6 through 8 middle school at Leland and Gray, high school choice, and Jamaica Village School is either used as the special ed facility, as Stephanie discussed briefly before, or return to the town. This one, I'm going to say, Lori, there would be a total of 55 FTEs. The tax rate is slightly better than the last scenario, but still not terrific. It does keep everybody, it keeps people home. It keeps the younger kids closer to home and then sends them out in the world again. And it does, there may be some advantages to having the special ed, it would be bringing the kids who are out of district placements now maybe back closer to in district, is essentially what that would be doing, if I understood what Stephanie was talking about. So, there are some, there does look to be some savings in this one, but again, not amazing. Questions on that one? Dana.
Yeah, putting all these kids into 1 or 2 schools, what if we get a sudden increase in population due to COVID? And everybody decides that Vermont looks better than New York City and having their kids there.
I don't really think there's an answer to that one. Al?
Well, there is.
I certainly don't have an answer to that. No.
Yeah.
My question, so this would be for Lori, and so I think what Mike brought up earlier about the small schools grants, that's going to flow through all the rest of these, correct? So where it says 3, it's actually 2. Where it says 2, it's 1. And in tax rate terms, what would one small school grant be worth their tax rate? A couple pennies, 3 pennies?
It depends on the school. And I also wanted to add with this particular scenario, if JVS were to be used for special education, it is possible that you would still get the small schools grant because it's used for educational purposes. Okay, but they're, so yeah, as far as tax rate, probably 3 cents, roughly, maybe 4, probably 3.
So are those numbers right, but the number is wrong, or are the numbers actually high because you had too many grants in there, Lori? I see you, Emily.
No, where I had 2, it should be 1. We had potentially 3 this year. That was my confusion.
Are the dollars correct?
The dollars are fine. Yeah, the
dollars are correct. It's just the number of grants that are wrong.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Emily, you had a question?
Well, I have a comment following Dana's line of thinking. I just wanted to make sure that people understand when you start tuitioning students out, which this scenario shows the 9 through 12 being tuitioned out. And if there is, as Dana suggested, a sudden influx in a number of students, that does have an impact because when you tuition, we've seen it locally in our school districts over and over. Win Hall was a great example of it. The state had to bail Win Hall out when it happened, and you have no control over how many people are living in your communities, and you just have to pay it when you tuition. So it can be a significant impact, and I just want to make sure people understand that, not just brush that off. There is an answer to that if the scenario plays out in the way Dana suggested. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tina's got her hand
up.
Hi, Tina Bills. I just had a question about the special ed. If the special ed ends up going to Jamaica, what grades is that for? Is that a K through 12 or is that a K through 6, or what is the proposal for that?
This is Stephanie. I'm hoping everybody wants me to be the one to answer that. It could be whatever the need is, and I think that it would take some work to figure out what population, either based on need, we want to serve, and then take a look at, is it pre-K through 12? Is it middle school? Is it high school? Is it just elementary? Is it just pre-K? So we would have to look at that and target that, probably with a subcommittee, I would imagine.
Okay.
Anybody else with a question, comment? I gotta tell you, it's exciting to have so many people here, but there are 60 plus people here. It's like, I've never had a Zoom meeting this big that I managed.
Joe, I don't know if you could see that I raised my hand. Carly Sanderson here.
Hi, Carly.
Hi. I have a question, a clarifying question. I'm not sure who the appropriate person is to answer it for me, but I'm very curious about if we go to the school choice, one of those scenarios that offers school choice for our high school. I'm assuming we're looking at regionally located high schools for that choice. But my question really is not so much about which schools, it's about the process for being tuitioned in. So do those schools have to take our students? Is there an application process? Choice sounds wonderful, like I could choose to send my kid to any area high school, but do those high schools have to take my child?
Bill, is that a question for you?
Carly, good question. Each school is different. In general, our region has declining enrollment in all schools. So I would suppose that if choice was offered, that there are many schools that would be excited to have students attend. There are different independent schools that have different processes. So, for example, Vermont Academy or Burn Burton, there are different pathways to those schools. Vermont Academy, for example, is hurting in enrollment, and so they are lowering the cost to attend. This year is the first year of doing that. Having been the former principal of Dover and seeing different relationships formed with different schools, Burn Burton does relationships with school districts, but in terms of being guaranteed specific spots at specific schools, you are absolutely correct. There is no guarantee. You'd have to work all those things out. So you make a really good point.
Thank you, Bill. And can I just add on to that question? Then, because you mentioned, for instance, Vermont Academy, which has their typically higher fees or things like that, will the district cover no matter where I choose to send my child, or will there be a flat fee and anything above that I would have to cover?
So for the purposes of this demonstration, we went with an average of $17,000. 17.4 is the average for a sending town to go to Burn Burton. Right now, Vermont Academy is accepting the average high school tuition, which I believe is $16,846. For comparison's sakes, Brattleboro, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, I believe is $15,750. But again, it would be up to the board. The law states that the board can decide how much they would like to pay. They can pay the average tuition to independent schools. You must pay whatever is the allowable tuition at a public school. So for the purposes of this conversation, we tried to go with 17,000, which gave us a little bit higher than an average between something like a private school like Burn Burton and a public school like Brown.
Thank you, Bill.
Joe, can I add something to that? This is Marty Testo.
Yeah, sure. Hang on, Marty. I got a couple of hands ahead of you, but I'll stick you right in, okay?
Okay, sorry, excuse me.
No, that's fine. I got you.
All right.
Dana, you had your hand up, and then Emily, and then Marty.
Yeah, Joe, it's Dana. Hey, are we, I know it's school choice and anybody can go, but are we figuring in transportation on these things? Covering it or not? Is that a Bill question?
Yes.
Yeah, so Tammy asked that on chat as well. So again, for demonstration purposes, I believe we put in $200,000 for transportation. I don't know if that is too much, if that's not enough. It was basically figuring on a lump sum of money. The whole point of kind of going through these questions is to get that clarification from you all. So that's really important for us to maybe get that a little bit into a tighter window so that the board has the best information. But yes, we did build in transportation for the choice option.
Emily.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a sort of a broader statement based on Carly's questions around school choice. I just want everybody to be very, very realistic about what school choice is. And people have often heard me say that choice is a wonderful thing. We all want to have choices in our lives. But where I struggle with choice in school districts, public schools, remains around who has access to that choice. And you know, Dana just brought up transportation, and there's many other factors involved, including after school activities and all that sort of thing. And unless there's equitable school choice, I struggle with, you know, opening that path for our students, unless we can guarantee all of our students have the same access to that school choice. So I'm not trying to say it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to say that if we ever walk down the path of opening up school choice for our students, I want to make sure my questions will always be around whether every child has access to the equal opportunity of school choice. And so I just want to lay that out there because there's so many factors involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty.
Thanks, Joe. I just wanted to add to that I sat in a Southern Vermont League athletic meeting today, and which was represented by numerous teams throughout our area, numerous schools, and without naming schools, there would be schools that at this time are not taking students because they are bursting at the seams. So school choice would not be an option for some of the schools that we may think could be an option for some of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Option 6. Okay. Option 7 is to have pre-K through 6th grade students stay here and to open up choice for grades 7 through 12. Again, Jamaica Village School could end up as a... You went to option 6, Al. Didn't we just do option 6?
We were on 5, Joe.
Oh, sorry. I keep getting ahead of myself. I really apologize. So option 6 is pre-K 6 locally, with pre-K being in all 3 buildings, Jamaica, Newbrook, and Townsend, and having 7 through 12 be opened up for school choice. This one, again, keeps the younger kids home and opens up the choice for parents and students. We have a further reduction in FTEs, and you know, we have a pretty low student-teacher ratio in the elementary schools, and then send them off. This one would have 2 small schools grants, but the number is still right. And the tax rate, hovers slightly above or slightly below $2. So again, not a huge savings here.
I have a question, Joe.
Sure. Go ahead, Howie.
How does the 7 through 12 choice jive with the surrounding schools? In other words, does Burton, Green Mountain, Brattleboro offer 7th grade? Does Bill know that?
Bill does.
Thank you, Howie. Good question. 7th and 8th grade, it would be dependent. It kind of goes back to Marty's point on local middle schools that take students. So in our surrounding area, you have, I guess you could go Dummerston, Putney, the Mountain School in Winhall or Bonneville, Brattleboro,
Marlboro,
Hilltop Montessori.
Yeah, Marlboro, if you were on
Marlboro. So all a distance, but those are middle schools. But again, going back to Marty's point, the middle school would have to decide to take those students.
It would be nice if we had some guidance from the state on a regional policy for this kind of thing. If we're going to start, if we're looking at closing schools, we have to look at the bigger picture and, talk to our neighbors about what the long-term prognosis is.
I think that if the board was interested in going further down the road of these options that consider school choice, part of the task of myself and my colleagues would be to contact those possibilities and find out the reality of spots being open. And I'm game to engage with regional superintendents about that conversation as well. But we have not done any of that work until we hear direction from the board about what they would like to explore deeper.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody? Dana?
Yeah, I know. I'm asking a lot of questions. Is school choice offered at 7th and 8th grade level? I thought it was just 9 through 12 in the state.
School choice 9 through 12 is a statutory thing. High school students can choose a public school choice. You can be a choice town by decision. I mean, Stratton, Winhall, they offer school choice for all their students. They don't operate a single school. So we would just cease, once you don't operate a particular grade level, those students then can choose to go get that education elsewhere.
And Joe, by elsewhere, you mean either public schools or approved independent schools? They have.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now we're to option 7, right? Okay, so 7 is similar to this, except in that we keep the pre-K through 6th graders. Here, we divide them up with pre-K through 2nd grade being at Townsend Elementary and 3 through 6 being at Newbrook Elementary Building. Jamaica then is either special ed or back to the town, and we continue with high school choice. I want to say, this has, again, a smaller number of FTEs. Educational spending is down a little bit. This one has the lowest tax rates of any of the ones proposed. And still not like, wow, that's so cheap, given what we look at now. So, it does get the Leland and Gray long-term, considerations a little bit off our plate because we're not using it anymore. But we'd have to figure out what we're going to do with it. It still has its issues, and I'm not sure actually what happens to Leland and Gray if we cease to use it. I mean, it's not a town school, so where does it go? Do we know? I see Emily and Bill smiling and shaking their heads. Like, yeah, we don't know. So we'd have to look into that if that was one of the options that we chose. Other thoughts on this plan?
So I would just add that I don't believe it's part of our charter. I actually found our charter the other day, and I've got to pull it out and give it to Bill so that you can look at it. But I don't think that option is part of our charter. Just let you know.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have the option to do that, or we'd have to amend our charter somehow?
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that I don't believe it's addressed in our charter. I'd have to go through it. I'm not even going to do it. I'm just going to give it to Bill. He may have a copy of it anyway, but I was given a copy a long time ago of our Leland and Gray charter, original charter, and I just came across it the other day, and I had it set aside to give to Bill, but I don't believe there's anything in there about how we disband the school if it's not being used. I'm sure there's a legal way to do it. There's always a legal way to do everything.
Gotcha. Thank you. Additional questions, thoughts?
Joe, I have a question. This is Chris Jers. If you see my hand.
Yep, I see hands now. Thanks. I got you, Chris. Anna, Dana.
I'm wondering why the thinking going to the K2 in Newbrook, or excuse me, in Townsend, and the 3 whatever in Townsend, especially after the conversation last year where a lot of parents were against it, when now you're going to have some of your youngest Jamaica students from far out or whatever traveling a long ways to get to Newbrook. What's the reasoning of doing that split?
Bill?
No deep thought, just a model for the board to consider, and they can say that they don't want it, and we won't go any further.
Thank you.
Leanne.
Sort of noticing a trend where a lot of these options are involving opening up 9 through 12 or 7 through 12 for choice. I was just wondering if there was a particular reasoning behind that, or if it's where the most financial efficiencies are, or how that was chosen so often as an option.
Bill?
Just models around the state. I don't know of any models around the state that have choice in elementary and then congregate for middle or high. I could build that model if that is something the board is interested in. Just in preparing the board for this conversation, we just kind of looked at around other models that were around the state, and those were the most common.
Emily? You next, Dana. Emily, you're muted.
I just want to say once again that while tax rates on choice can be predicted, enrollments cannot, and so often tuitioning is very volatile. And I'm not saying it would be for us. It may not be, but it has been across the state for other school districts. And I just want to make sure that people understand that when you tuition, you don't have a choice anymore. People moving into your community are going to be able to have access. If they have school-age children, they'll have access to that tuition. And it has become a problem for some school districts across the state. And I think that we always need to be aware of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana.
I have a question, Joe.
Hang on. Dana's got his hand up, and then I'll get you, Howie.
This is for Bill. Bill, when you figure out those choice schools with 7 and 8, can you add Floodbrook to that?
When you talk about the opportunity to use school choice for 7th and 8th, again, it would go back to that original point that Marty had, where as long as if choice was a path that the board decided to go down, I would contact schools to find out if they'd be willing to take those students. And just because I didn't mention Floodbrook on the first mention doesn't mean that wouldn't be a possibility. So yes, that would definitely be a possibility.
Yeah, I know. I'd probably be asked that from being the Jamaica rep and that being close. People would ask me.
Howie, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't really understand how that model of being flooded with students and having to pay all the tuition flies anymore, because the funding follows the kids around and the funding comes from the state. So even if, because we go to school choice, we get an influx of high school students, doesn't the state fund all those extra kids? It doesn't really cost us anymore directly. Am I
No,
correct?
it's not true. We pay locally.
How?
Bill. For Lori.
Go ahead, Bill. Or Lori.
Yeah, so Lori, jump in if I'm going to explain it incorrectly. But when you add a student and they show up before you count them, then they would become part of your equalized pupil count. And then your equalized pupil count becomes part of the denominator for your education spending. So it's not truly a one-to-one. I understand your point that if you have a student come in, you get to count them and they become part of your equalized pupil. But as we know, that's a rolling average over 2 years. If they show up after we count them in October, that could be a particular challenge. And it's not a one-for-one if you don't get $17,000 per student. It just becomes an equalized pupil, and then you take your education spending, you divide your equalized pupils to get your tax rate. How did I do, Lori?
Very good. It does take time to catch up. It takes, because of that 2 year.
Yeah, but it also lags behind 2 years too when things fall off. So it all sort of works out, I would think. I mean, I'm just trying, in the old days when you actually had to fund your kids out of your town's individual property tax, it made more of a difference when you were tuitioning kids out. But if we're only paying tuition, that's equal to what the state's paying us roughly. I don't see that we're risking too much on that basis. And on that note, too, I have a question for Bill. Is it possible to negotiate an agreement with a neighboring school if we were to close our 9 through 12 grades and tuition kids out? Could we work out an agreement with Brattleboro, with Green Mountain, to take our kids so we don't have to worry that they'll have no place to go?
Absolutely. That would be part of the responsibility of the board in planning for those, is to have some preliminary conversations along those lines.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's called designating schools.
Thank you. More questions? I'm scanning for hands here. Okay. Option 8. Option 8 is to run pre-K through 8th grade locally, all in the Leland and Gray building, and again open 9 through 12 for choice.
Joe, I'm sorry, I got a question. My hand's not working on my screen.
Okay.
Just in general, all these scenarios, options, whatever you want to call them, with tuitioning out all the high school kids or high school and middle school. Isn't it true that this district, if it didn't have, or if our SU didn't have a K through 12 district during the formation of Act 46, we couldn't have had our district that we have now? So how would that affect by law Wyndham Central not having a K through 12 district?
You still have a K through 12 district. You just
Where?
tuition the other students. They're still your kids.
Just because you don't operate a K through 12 school doesn't mean that you're not a K through 12 district.
Then why were we told that if the West River district didn't form, because they're a K through 12 district, that River Valleys couldn't form either to have their own district? What you're saying now is completely different than what everyone was told during the formation of Act 46.
You have an understanding of this, Emily?
Well, I'll just say, I think what he's talking about is Act 49, which followed Act 46, which allowed the 2x1 or 3x1. Bill, help me out with all this. This was part of the law, but that's why you're linking it with the River Valleys and all of that. But K-12 district, how you operate within a K-12 district was not, it wasn't prescribed. You could decide how you would operate a K-12 district, but you needed to operate a K-12 district. And when you refer to the side-by-side or the River Valleys with us, that was part of Act 49, and it was an expansion of Act 46, and it allowed some other models to come into place. That's all. And Bill, feel free to jump in.
No, I mean, technically Ken is correct, because it wasn't Act 46, it was Act 49, which allowed for different models, as you're saying, the side-by-side, which allowed you to partner up with a K through 12 district, of which West River. And it doesn't matter what you operate as long as it is a K through 12 district.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe. This is Samantha Bovat.
Hi.
Sorry, my hand's not working either online. So the term school choice, Leland and Gray is not a choice. So it might be a little confusing to say school choice if Leland and Gray isn't one of them, that it's really tuitioned out. Just something to think about. When I think about school choice, I think, oh, maybe Leland and Gray is one of my choices, and it's not. It's not open to a minimal number of people or students. It's not open at all. So I think there's a difference between what people might understand as school choice and Leland and Gray is not open, period. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Al, you have your hand up?
I do. So now that we've gone through all 8, and I think several people have mentioned this, I think 4 through 8, in which Leland and Gray closes and we go to school choice or some form of that, just really wouldn't pass with the public. That's just my biggest concern. And then the other thing is we haven't discussed, I mean, we're looking at pretty far down the road here. We're talking 18 months down the road. Hopefully by then we have somewhat of a solution for COVID. Hopefully we'll be down that path. So I want us to not feel like we're living right now in the present, and that when this gets enacted, that we'll be in a different place, and that we should start thinking about that place. And one of those things to think about is, what if we were to build? What if we were to have a campus, a K through 12 campus, configured somehow, centrally located? Obviously that involves thinking of what to do with the other buildings, repurposing, etc. But I think, again, I don't think the people in this district will stomach having their kids being sent to other local high schools in the area. And I just don't think those options are tenable, and that we should look at the potential of building.
Thanks, Al. I have that same note. What about another option where we have a single campus where we put everybody in one place? How does that work? I think, the high school choice thing is a difficult one, and I agree with you that closing that building is probably not going to happen unless there was, earth-shattering savings or something. But I don't see a driver, so I agree with you. But that's these were the first 8, and there really should come out of this 9, 10, 11, 12. Or what if we took option 2 and changed these parameters? What happens then? That's really the work that the board and the administration needs to do over the next several months, so that we can come up with something that does work for our students and our community. I see your hand up, Dana.
Yeah, I was, I like the idea of a one campus school. And, I always said I kind of like to see that one campus, one curriculum. But, we also got to answer to the taxpayers. They're not going to probably like the way things are going to go in the next couple of years as far as money. So it's going to be a hard sell. And I don't, we want to do the best we can for our kids. But, if people can't pay the taxes, they're going to take the kids and move away. And it's going to devastate this area. That's all I got to say on that.
Al, your hand up again or still?
Again.
Okay.
Dana, I completely agree with you. Another thing I think that has kind of fallen by the wayside over the last 6 weeks, 2 months, with good reason, is the pupil weighting study, which could very well impact that tax rate that you're talking about, Dana, and would definitely be much more in favor of some of these lower numbers. Now, Emily could probably speak to how and when that will be enacted, whether it'll be phased in, whether, I'm guessing phased in, but that should be tax relief for us as we start to implement things like this.
Joe, I'm happy to respond to that.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, go ahead.
I couldn't agree with you more, Al, on that. But I will also say that the focus in Montpelier is certainly on COVID right now. I would also, and it's forefront in my mind about the waiting study. I just mentioned it to somebody again today. The challenge that we are facing right now in Montpelier around the 19 school districts, which ours is one of them, who do not have a budget yet, is very significant for those of us in the 19 school districts. So I was having a conversation about that with someone today on the Ed committee, and brought up the waiting study again, saying, and I'm going to say I continue to bring up excess spending threshold as well. We are in an unprecedented time right now, and a very challenging time. I also think we're in a very transitional time. And I would, as much as I really believe that we need to come up with some sort of solution locally for our taxpayers for that tax rate, because there isn't a person here that doesn't believe we need to be finding a place that works for our taxpayers. This is super challenging. But I also know that there's going to be some changes coming. Dana made a suggestion earlier about people moving back to Vermont to get out of cities. I mean, we don't know. There's a possibility something like that might happen. We don't know. And so thank you. So I would just urge just some caution as much as we can before we make too many significant moves. And I will continue to fight forward with what we can do with a waiting study, because it's not just us. It's many rural school districts around the state of Vermont that need help, and we're one of them. So thanks.
Thank you, Emily.
Mike, then Howie.
All right, so I do agree with what Emily, Dana, and Al were saying. I don't think that closing LNG is going to really fly with the voters at all. But it's going to beg the follow-up question, what is the SU going to do to help share some of this pain? How are we going to cut costs at the SU level? I know it's a different board, not governed by this board, but I would hope that maybe Bill could facilitate some SU board discussions that maybe looking at ways that we can save money on the SU level. That's all.
I think those are discussions that the voting reps from this board would have to initiate at the SU and bring back. And it's a different conversation than how we as a district move forward. But
right, but it's all related because the public views it as the SU. There's a significant amount of public who view SU spending as a driving factor of our current budget issues.
We need to clarify that view.
Fair enough.
Howie, your hand was up, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I remember at least 3 bond votes that we went through trying to get the Dutton gym renovated, theater facilities added to the school. Getting a bond to build a new campus seems a really, really long shot. So I'm not sure that we can really include that in our plans right now. Thank you.
Al, you had a hand up? No? It's okay. I don't see any more hands. So we've had a request to, include another option with a single campus. And we've had a little discussion of the waiting study. Are there any other options that we want to see fleshed out? I don't want to.
Can I just say something before we get into other options?
Sure, Marty.
All right, thank you. So I know there's been a lot of discussion tonight about obviously the educational academic piece. And with 8 different options on the table there, that can go in a lot of different ways as schools expand, schools shrink, consolidate, however you want it. One of the biggest impacts I would see to any of this would be the impact that losing Leland and Gray at the 6 through 12 level would have on the co-curriculars, which is a massive, massive part of this community. The support that we get for our athletic programs and our theater programs and our music programs is unprecedented in a small town. And if our students were have to go to other schools or choose to go to other schools where A, they wouldn't get to experience that, B, they might even get the opportunity to participate in it, could be catastrophic for many of our students. And so I know I get academics first, and I believe in academics first, but I believe that co-curricular is 1B. And I think you have to take that into account when we take into these 8 different scenarios where, I'll use the example because it's right down the road, but if students from Leland and Gray had to go down to Brattleboro as a school choice, many, if not all, of our students would find it very difficult not only to participate in those co-curriculars there, but to deal with the constraints of the travel and what time they would get home and the impact it would have in their academics because they play so many schools up north. There's so many other things to look into. And, I'm very proud to be the athletic director at Leland and Gray. And one of the main reasons why is because of the support that we get from the community for our co-curriculars. And I'd hate to see that be lost because of, some schools some schools consolidating and things like that. I don't know. I think it's a special place and a special program. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. I agree. Emily, you had your hand up, and then Lindsay.
Yeah, I'll be really quick because Lindsay hasn't talked and I have a lot. But I just wanted to say, first, thanks, Marty, because we all know how much Leland and Gray is supported. But I don't want us to limit our thoughts or options to building a brand new school for K-12. I think there's other possibilities to provide a K-12 district. Maybe it does require some building, maybe it doesn't, who knows? But I think Howie's point is pretty well taken, that it is always hard, especially in this time today, of thinking about asking for bonds. We've seen them not fly very well in the state recently, and we know that it's a big challenge. But we shouldn't limit our options to just one scenario of providing education. Maybe as a way to keep Leland and Gray and build something else, smaller something. So all I'm trying to say is I have no idea. It just doesn't necessarily mean one big brand new building for multi-millions of dollars. There may be other options that we should keep in our minds. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. What do you think, Lindsay?
So the thought that's coming to the forefront for me is that however the configurations end up working out, I think that it needs to be in the front of everybody's mind how much of an impact on all the different communities having a school creates. And I'm not advocating one way or another at this point. I just know that it will make a giant change, a huge impact into what community feels like. And that could be a really great thing. And that could also not be a really good thing. And so I just think that we need to really consider what that means. And I think the part about the extracurriculars and people having something to support and get out there and cheer for people is a big part of that. So yes, we want the best educational opportunity for our kids. Absolutely. We also have to consider that the choices we're making are impacting the entire community and what it means to be a part of that.
Absolutely. That's why this is a long process with a lot of discussion. The more community involvement we get from the beginning as we contemplate any change at all is good. The more the better. Anybody else? Any other options? So the way this process will work now is, we've asked for we've asked for the single campus one. We've talked about not necessarily supporting the options where we go to tuitioning our high school students and getting rid of Leland and Gray. Is it fair to say at this point that we don't want to look too much harder at those, and that the energy of Bill in the cabinet should be put into looking at the options that keep Leland and Gray and the one additional option we've come up with? Keegan?
I think it goes like, in looking at this list of 8 options with the 9th added of a common campus pre-K-12, I think it should also not be forgotten that, you know, the choice to keep Leland and Gray open at the expense of closing Jamaica Village, I don't think that that's really a choice that I don't think the voters in my community would vote for that. Being a community member, I don't have children, but I do know the importance of having school options. If I ever did have kids and they were to go to school, their best option would be sitting on a bus for 45 minutes. And I'm not comfortable with that. And I don't think that anyone who has young children in this community would be comfortable with that either. So if there is a way where we can find a way to keep, I understand that between last school year and this school year, Jamaica Village lost Jamaica students, 17 of them, to go to Townsend Elementary School. I was not heavily involved in the conversation of school redesign last year. I was doing a lot of work in the district that I teach in. So I would be curious, is there a way that we can keep Jamaica Village open, yet optimize the number of Jamaica students that attend that particular school within the community? So when I asked earlier about would Jamaica students have choice, I was under the impression that there currently was that option to leave Jamaica, and how do we go about reeling in or reining in those families and bringing them back into our local community to at least make Jamaica a little bit more viable as a building.
So school choice was one of the things that in the formation of this district, the communities asked for, was the inter-district school choice, where, you know, the kids from Jamaica can go to Newfane or Townsend, the kids from Townsend can go to Jamaica or Newfane, and you can move elementary students around within the district. That choice was something that we as a board came up with a policy on and put in place in response to our communities asking for that choice. When you had asked about choice earlier, I thought you were asking about the choice that comes when you are a sending town and, you know, you're not operating a school, and therefore your students can choose to go anywhere, in district or out of, your district no longer operates that. For instance, our high school students, they could go to Brattleboro or Green Mountain or Burton or VA or any number of schools if we didn't operate a high school. If we stopped operating an elementary school in one town, those students would still only have choice to go to school within the West River Education District. They wouldn't have the ability to leave the district. So there's two different kinds of school choice. There's the inter-district choice that we have as an education district, and then there's we're not operating a school. You can choose to go to any other public school or approved private school. Right, Emily? Approved?
So then just to clarify, in the event that Jamaica Village were to close, and in the event that one day I have kids that are growing up in Jamaica, rather than sending them 10 minutes down the road to Wynn Hall or to Floodbrook, my kids would be on a bus being transported down to Townsend or to Newfane. Is that what you're talking about? I'm just looking for clarity.
Yes. Well, if that's what the district decides, that, then, if we operate one school if we operated one elementary school that was centrally located, all the kids would go to that. If we choose to operate 3, then you could go to the one that's closest to you. But yes, if we didn't operate a building, then students would have to get to the building that they wanted to go to. I don't remember whether Dana or Al had their hand up first. And Terry, I see that you can't raise your hand, so I'll get you in a second.
I'll let Al go first.
Go ahead, Al.
All right, so similar vein what Keegan was just saying, and the way that we have the law, our article set up, it's very difficult. It's a high threshold to have a school close, right? It's up to that particular town. So I would say my additional choice 9, needs to have some permutations with it, and that would be, first one, yes, one whole campus, and then Leland and Gray, and only 2 schools close. Just some permutations so that we understand that maybe it might just be the Leland and Gray campus that gets rebuilt, and the other schools remain intact, or some variation in between.
Thanks, Al. Dana?
I was just going to add, Joe, to Keegan's comments that there was a group of individuals here in the community that felt strongly about keeping JVS open. They may be vocal. I don't know. I don't know how many in their numbers, how many people are really interested in it, but they're very strong attitude about keeping it open. And I mean, closing it and high tax rates might push them in a position to want to get out of the district. I don't know what it will cause. So I'm, getting hit with a double whammy. There might be some issues there. I mean, I don't think they're going to accept a special ed only type thing. I don't know. We'll have to find out at public meetings. People will have to come out to these meetings that we are planning in the future, and they need to voice. We need to know where they want us to go.
Exactly. Thank you. Anybody else? So Al, if I understood yours, you're now proposing the option of a single campus, like literally a single campus, and additionally perhaps explore the possibility of keep Leland and Gray and maybe one elementary school, or explore that a little bit more to maybe a central campus. I'm thinking, like Leland and Gray and Townsend, because they're right across the street from each other. It's almost a single campus, and it might be cheaper than trying to build a giant new building that takes everybody.
Well, I was still leaning towards building. Like, so if Leland and Gray has outlived its useful life. I mean, poor Bob's putting Band-Aids on it all day long. So I mean, that has to be a huge consideration, is finding some land or rebuilding on site, something. So that would be priority 1 for the build. And then the other schools, whether it be all the other elementary schools remain open and we continue to put Band-Aids on them, or something in between.
Okay, thanks.
This is Keegan.
I see you trying to talk.
I am trying. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. So, Bill, my question, I currently teach in a pre-K through 12 singular building. And it has its ups and its downs. There are positive sides to having everyone all on one campus, but it also puts a huge weight on administration to deal with a disruptive 4-year-old in kindergarten while meeting the needs of a middle school student facing some emotional trauma and ensuring that the senior is going to be able to graduate on time. but that's beside the point. Is there a great enough need where we could create a, like option 10, where a building or the buildings within the district become specialized? So for the students that have been going to Kindle Farm or going to Kernhattan or some other therapeutic environment that our kids go to, would there be the possibility of repurposing one of our current buildings to function as one of those alternative school placements? That way the kids are still within the district, but they're getting their needs met somehow within our structure, as opposed to being sent out to a completely different environment. Is there a large enough number of students where you could sustain a model like that?
That's what Stephanie was trying to explain, that if a building was not being used for pre-K through 12 education, that it could be explored in a regional basis to mimic something like what you have just explained.
Okay.
Carly, I see you've got your hand up.
All right.
I do. Thank you, Joe. So Carly Sanderson again. I have, it's not really a well-formulated proposal by any means, but I'm curious, since I really feel like if Leland and Gray's classrooms and hallways were full of students, we wouldn't be having these conversations, we'd be having different ones. So I'm wondering if there is a proposal that we could look at that would allow us to add something to our current Leland and Gray programming that would entice students to want to enroll at Leland and Gray. Having additional students tuition in seems like that would be a financial benefit for us. It would be a benefit to the students who are currently enrolled. I'm not exactly sure what sort of a proposal that might be, but it does seem to me that if we could think of ways to make Leland and Gray more enticing, and so our numbers of enrolled students increased, a lot of these conversations would be very different.
Bob, you heard it. Make Leland and Gray more attractive.
Joe, can I just...
Well, I think, I mean, part of the conversation I've been having with the staff the last couple of years is just that, and thinking about the benefits of a small school, being able to personalize education for kids and really be able to do a much better job of choice within choice, if you will, for those kids and the programs that you can create. So that's really what we're moving towards, I think. And in fact, I think the COVID-19 stuff has been an interesting opportunity for us to do that because we're small. And thinking, as we've been thinking about what the fall looks like, and hearing other principals across the state talk about the challenges of bigger campuses with 1,000 kids, 800 kids, and how they might have to deal with distancing. I actually sent a letter to the Dover sixth graders and to the Wardsboro sixth graders asking them, if you haven't made your choice yet, or even if you have made your choice yet, you should really consider what Leland and Gray can offer, because we're going to be in a much better situation in some of these bigger schools to respond to this stuff and be able to provide safety nets for kids by really thinking about sort of more personalized experience than they might get in a larger school. So yeah, I think that's exactly what we've been talking about, and I think we're well situated to do that kind of work. Absolutely.
Thanks, Bob. I really didn't mean to put you on the spot hard. Anyone else have anything they'd like to see explored? Questions about any of the existing proposals or the newly proposed options?
Joe, can I just add a little bit more to Carly's and what Mr. Tebow said?
Sure.
One of the things, I think Leland and Gray is extremely attractive because I have the opportunity to be inside the walls every day and work with the staff and the kids that are inside of it. What makes Leland and Gray a hard attraction at times is the turnover that we have with our staff, and sometimes being in the news like this or going through these meetings where you never know what's going to happen with the uncertainty of the school, and that makes it a hard attraction for families throughout the towns that surround us. So if we could get a little bit more, be more stable in what we're trying to do, and prove that, hey, listen, we're going to be here. We're not going anywhere. We got staff that are staying here. We got great things going on here, which happen every day at Leland and Gray. We need to be able to back that up. But we've been fighting this fight for a couple years now, ever since Act 46 came out, and that makes it difficult. It makes Bob's life difficult. It makes Bill's life difficult, and you never know. It shows our turnover inside our classroom sometimes. So with some more stability, like, hey, listen, we don't need to have this meeting every year. That we're going to be here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to provide a tremendous opportunity and education for the people in this community and the communities that surround us. That's going to attract people to Leland and Gray.
Thanks, Marty. I got Tammy, Emily, and Al.
You better take Tammy first.
I did. She's the only one we haven't heard from.
Hi, Tammy Clausen. I think I unmuted myself. So yeah, I've been listening here all evening as well, and I appreciate the breadth of discussion. And one thing I was just thinking in terms of some of these a configuration of options or whatever, it seems like there might be a cost savings to bus everybody to one location. Now, whether the taxpayers could swallow building a brand new building that would house the pre-K to 12 or not, Townsend is pretty central. There's a vacant Janos building just a mile up the road from Leland and Gray and Townsend Elementary, and that could probably be converted into a very nice sized school of some kind to house additional children. So it's just a thought, just to be thinking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Emily?
That's so funny, Tammy, because I was on the board when we took a tour of the Janos building to look it over at one point when it was on the market a number of years ago. That has been considered in the past. And I think it's another worthy option. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Bob, who just said everything I want a principal in any school to say. And I do think that we are doing a really good job trying to reinvent ourselves. I will just say that it wasn't Act 46, with all due respect, Marty, it wasn't Act 46 that sent us down this path. It was a decline in enrollment, and it started long before Act 46. I mean, I could give you a list of the numbers of the bills that we tried to deal with even before I was in the legislature, trying to address the challenges that we were facing with declining enrollment and the national trend that we've watched going on for quite some time, where families were looking to more urban areas to raise their children as opposed to rural areas. I don't know what the future holds, but I do think we're in a transition again. And I will just repeat it, that keeping whatever school configuration that we operate, we keep thinking like our principal does at Leland and Gray, and all of our principals I know do at our elementary schools in the same way. Try to get the best options we can, but over the many years we've been trying to do this, what we've done is we've had to lower our spending, and that impacted our programming. So being creative and thinking outside the box, both for our curriculum, for our programming, and for our facilities is critical to this. So I'm so excited to hear all these thoughts and options. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Emily. Al?
Totally agree, Emily. I'm a fan of all the options. I think it's great to be creative and innovative, and certainly something like COVID makes you be creative and respond. And I'm proud of our administrators and all the teams that have done so. But like Marty, I would say we have to create stability in the community. And I think, Joe, you already alluded to it. Taking the options 4 through 8, I think it is, that involved closing Leland and Gray kind of off the table and out of people's minds might make people feel a little bit better. And whether that means as we continue with Leland and Gray as is, or we build a new Leland and Gray, that at least people know that that's what's going to happen. There may be some reconfiguration with the elementary schools, but I think for the community to know that they're still going to have a central hub somewhere Townsend-wise located, or Newfane, or in that area.
If everyone agrees, we can call that a direction, and we can stop putting energy into those options that get rid of Leland and Gray. If you disagree, certainly speak up now.
Well, I wouldn't want to take all our options off, but I mean, I'm one person.
So which options specifically, Dana? Any?
I was kind of like leaving 8. Option 8. And adding to it another part of that of keeping Townsend Elementary pre-K through 1 or pre-K through K, and moving the central office in with that. And if we had special ed, we could add that to the Townsend Elementary School, keeping the 2. And then offering school choice, or who knows what our high school numbers will be like. We could put everybody in Leland and Gray. That's what I got.
Okay.
Joe.
Yes, Howie.
Yeah, I would still like to see a comparison of what programs the surrounding high schools are offering compared to what we can offer. I don't think we should take that option off the table. And as far as making Leland and Gray unstable, this is the first time we've ever considered anything like this in the 20 years I've been sitting on the board. Last time, actually, we did what was about 20 years ago when we were looking into renovating the school. I remember the principal from Brattleboro Union High School came to the board and did a presentation on taking on the entire Leland and Gray student population back when there were more kids at the school. So I love Leland and Gray, but we have to look at all the options. And as far as I can see, our school offers the smallest amount of programming from the surrounding high school. So to take off all options, I think Bill needs to talk to the surrounding superintendents and look at a regional plan for what's going on. High school kids can choose. High school kids have access to transportation. It's not like an elementary school kid. So no, I would really like to see all these options pursued, particularly in conjunction with surrounding high schools.
But high school students already can choose to go to a different high school to get programming that they want. So we don't have to cease running Leland and Gray to allow our students to have that choice. They already have it.
Yeah, I'm not, and believe me, I wish, but we're talking now about serious budget shortfalls. We are going into this conversation because our budgets keep going up and up and up, and our enrollments keep going down and down and down, and there seems to be no way to stop it. And one way to stop it is tuitioning kids out and losing a building like Leland and Gray. Leland and Gray is a lot of maintenance, and there's a lot more maintenance coming down the pipe. So to be fair, this is the time to really look at that option. If it's not a good option, this is the time to put it to rest. But if it is a good option, this is now the time and place to look at it. It's never been looked at before, not in the past 20 years.
Bill, do you have an understanding of what you would be looking at from that?
I wrote down is Howie would like a comparison of local high school programs of study. Would that be a fair ask?
Yeah. We'd like to know what the other our neighboring schools are offering.
I can do that.
Okay.
And what their what their feeling is about taking on additional students. I mean, we know that probably they would have more tuition, things like every school would. But it would be it would be good to talk to them about it and get a confirmation. So if we're going to look at that, we know what we're looking at.
I suspect that those principals would say the same thing Bob would say if you asked him about taking on more students. Send them.
I would suggest that you also look at enrollment trends in those districts as well then.
Yeah.
Joe, can I add one more thing to that?
Hang on one second, Marty.
All right.
We good here? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important that you can look at what other schools are offering. I think it's important you can look at what schools might be taking kids, but don't forget the fact, ask the Leland and Gray kids what we're offering and how much they cherish coming to Leland and Gray. I think that's important too, to get the kids' perspective on what's going on at Leland and Gray day in and day out and the opportunities they have there. So I think there's a few more things you might want to add into there. If you're going to get up, you're going to get, opportunities from everybody. Make sure you include the students because it's about them.
Thank you, Marty. And you're absolutely right. Okay, anything else to add to any of this? Or do we have the marching orders for Bill and gang?
Joe, I've got one last question, and I'll make it a quick one. And it has to do with alternative sources of funding. I did my student teaching at Burton Academy the same year that they received a $20 million endowment from the Rowland Foundation, or like the Rowland family. Aside from the education fund that's distributed through the state, do we know what other funding sources this district is able to tap into, like significant funding sources, either through grants or through endowments or through some kind of financial support system that this school district has tapped into, or that we would be willing to tap into?
Bill? Lori? Anyone?
Yeah, I haven't climbed the beanstalk to find the beans. There are some, I mean, Keegan's correct. There are some different legal realities around approved schools being able to have foundations and being able to have endowments. Public schools, after Act 68, there's a lot of limitations on that. Lori, if you want to add anything, I'm happy.
No, I think that Bill is right. There are some legal limitations around accepting money. It's why you can't have a town write a check to the school district just to offset costs. So we do tap into all the grants that we possibly can manage. And a lot of those are federal grants that come down through. I'm sure your district taps into all the same ones that we do as well. And, we're always looking for any opportunities that we can.
Thank you both. Okay, I think that's everything. I don't see any more hands. All right, so you know what you're doing for the next meeting, Bill. We'll review this with the we'll review this in the smaller group and bring it to the board on the next when we continue the planning process. And the date of that meeting will be June 8th. So you did ask for the executive session for the contract. So for that, that's the only thing we have left, correct?
Yeah, we just need to, just the board and Scott Tabachnik and myself. Everybody else can have a nice evening.
Okay. So thank you all for coming. It was really exciting to see such a huge crowd, and we'll be back. Austin, I can just pop you into the waiting room and you can come back afterwards. Is there going to be action after the executive session, Bill?
Hopefully.
Hopefully? Okay. So we'll be quick, Austin. Okay? You can unmute and talk to me.
Thanks so much for all the support.
Sounds good, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. All right, we're out of executive session. So who wants to make a motion?
I do. I just don't know what to say. I don't want to say too much or too little. What do I do?
So I think what you want to say, Keegan, is that you would like to authorize the superintendent to offer a contract to the selected candidate for the West River School District.
I would like to recommend that the superintendent offer a contract to the candidate for this position at Newbrook.
Is there a second?
Second. I'll second it, Joe. Dana.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded to allow the superintendent to offer a contract to the candidate. Any discussion? Further discussion?
Roll call.
All right, all in favor? Lindsay?
Aye.
Keegan?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Howie?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes. Offer away.
One more motion, right?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second it.
All right. All in favor? Do we want to go down the roll call? Lindsay?
Aye.
Keegan?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Ken?
Nay.
Okay, Ken wants to stay. Howie?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.